Okay then, we have a ton of fixtures to go through in the third week of the Overwatch League 2021. This is going to be quickfire because there are so many things to go through. We are going to fire through the regular season week fixtures, and then we are going to go straight into the playoffs, the knockouts of the May Melee, or the early ones anyway. So, first of all, we saw Paris Eternal taking on the Atlanta Reign. This will be a 3-0 for the Atlanta Reign. This is clearly Atlanta Reign demonstrating the fact, like they have been in previous seasons, they can pummel the small boys, but they can't compete with the big boys. Although, we do see them doing something later on that we'll go into in more depth. Then we see the Washington Justice taking on the Boston Uprising. Boston Uprising pick up a map against the Washington Justice. I don't think a lot of people would have expected that. Washington Justice do get a 3-1 in the end though. All good for the Washington Justice, and they look great going into their match against the Defiant later on in the weekend. Washington Justice, all sails ahead for the moment. Then we move over to the east, where we see Los Angeles Valiant, or Immortals Valiant, whatever you want to call them these days. I really want to keep calling them Immortal, but I don't want to mix people up. They would take on the Guangzhou Charge. This was a really big teller because, well, are Guangzhou Charge good enough to completely sweep the Valiant? Because the Valiant are the worst team in the league, right? Especially in the east. Were the Guangzhou Charge good enough to completely sweep that team and demonstrate that they are not kicking boys? Well, they did. 3-0 for the Guangzhou Charge. Really good result for them. Firmly putting Valiant as the worst team in APAC, and I think we all agreed with that one. And Guangzhou Charge showing promise. Not gonna lie. Then we saw Seoul Dynasty take on New York Excelsior. This was a 3-0 for Seoul Dynasty. Again, I thought New York Excelsior would put up more of a fight here, but Seoul Dynasty, they've been showing some consistency, which is actually something we didn't see from Seoul Dynasty in regular season matches last season. So this is actually really promising. And I really think the Seoul Dynasty, this is make or break season for Seoul. So this is a good start to it. And I like to see them carry on in this fashion. Then we see Shanghai Dragons take on Hangzhou Spark. This is a massively surprising match. This goes 3-2 for the Shanghai Dragons. It is mighty close. Hangzhou Spark almost steal this off the Dragons. Hangzhou Spark, they look much better. With the coaching changes that have come in, they look so much better with Padron going out now. And they look like Shy is a revelation at the moment. It's too late for the Hangzhou Spark now, in terms of the main melee. They won't make it. But, boy oh boy, this is a team to keep an eye out in June Joust going onwards. Shy is popping off. Gougeray's playing a lot more main tank. It is looking absolutely solid for the Hangzhou Spark right now. Absolutely solid. This is a big up-and-coming team under new coaching leadership that I think could do very, very well going through into the June Joust and further on down in the season. So really do keep an eye on this. Shanghai Dragons squeezed through, but it was not easy. Then we go back over to the west, and we see Boston Uprising taking on the London Spitfire. Okay, 3-2 for the Boston Uprising. Very disappointing for the London Spitfire, almost completely sealing them as a 0-4 in their first tournament of 2021 because, well, they've been taking on the Toronto Defiant next and no one expect them to win there. This was the most winnable game of the stage for, well, stage, I suppose it's a stage. It's a pseudo stage, tournament, whatever. This was the most winnable game for the London Spitfire and they failed to win it. This is unfortunate. However, this is also not great for the Boston Uprising either with this going so close. We want to see Boston Uprising sweeping teams like the Spitfire. Spitfire, there is a lot of work to do with this team. And it's going to be a big couple of weeks, as they will not be competing in the main melee, to sort things out. It's going to be a big couple of weeks. Moving on, San Francisco Shock taking on the Florida Mayhem. Slightly disappointing, 3-0 to the San Francisco Shock. I thought Florida Mayhem would be able to put on a bit more of a fight there, but Florida Mayhem, keep an eye on them. Keep an eye on them, my boys. Then, Toronto Defiant, after that, are going up against the Washington Justice. No surprises here, Washington Justice sweep the Defiant. I don't think the Defiant can compete with the Washington Justice. Haven't done all season. Washington Justice have too much quality for this Toronto Defiant roster, and it clearly showed. Toronto Defiant, they are a mid-pack team right now. I'm not going to lie. That's just kind of where they are, and there's some improvements needed before they can really start contesting with the big boys in the top, say, 5. In North America, anyway. So that's kind of where the Toronto Defiant are at. That's not too much of a surprising result. Moving on to the east, we saw Seoul Dynasty taking on the Immortals Valiant, Los Angeles Valiant, whatever you want to call them. 3-0 for the Seoul Dynasty. Again, consistency from Seoul. I'm really liking this consistency I'm seeing from Seoul in the regular season matches. It's going to do them very well. And Valiant, again, it ends 0-4 for them. Picked up one map I think, for the entirety of this melee. That's one map more than I thought they'd pick up, so congratulations to the Valiant, I guess. There's not much more to say, is it? Okay, Electric Boogaloo, Guangzhou Charge taking on the Hangzhou Spark. Okay, so after the performance that Hangzhou Spark put in against the Shanghai Dragons, I really wanted to change my prediction for this, and it kind of went the way that I thought it would. It was a 3-0 for the Hangzhou Spark. After the performance Hangzhou Spark put in against Shanghai, I don't think anyone really expected Guangzhou to be able to beat Hangzhou. Now, this week was always going to be, are Hangzhou going to be absolutely awful, or are Hangzhou going to bounce back big time? It was a Hangzhou that bounced back big time. Shy has just been incredible, and I don't think anyone is going to doubt Hangzhou going into the June Joust. We're not going to see them for the next couple of weeks, because they're not going to be in the May Melee, but in the June Joust, a lot of people are going to be keeping an eye on Hangzhou Spark to see if they can continue this run of form that they've had at the end of the May Melee. Or the May Melee qualifiers. So, yeah, definitely keep an eye on the boys in pink from China, because, yeah, they are certainly making some waves. After that, Shanghai Dragons taking on New York Excelsior. This was a 3-0 for the Shanghai Dragons. Perfect bounce back after a tough match against Hangzhou Spark. I thought New York, again, would make a better game of this, but New York have gone 0-6 this week. That is very, very disappointing. No May Melee for them. And this is a team, again, in the building phase. This is a team that will get better with time, I believe, but it's not quite there at the moment. Bianca has shown some great play, though. That's something I will highlight. I've been pretty impressed with Bianca so far. New York, they will get there, I hope, but it is going to be a slow progress. Slow process. In the West, we go back to, for the Saturday, this is Florida Mayhem taking on the Paris Eternal. Florida, they bounce back, but it's a 3-1. Paris Eternal, another one of those teams that has a knack of taking maps off people. It just happens. Like, you'd expect Florida Mayhem to 3-0 a team that can be 3-0'd by the Atlanta Reign. So it's kind of a letdown from the Florida Mayhem point of view. However, obviously Florida Mayhem are in the May Melee. So that is great for them. We will be moving on to their knockout performance in a minute, which is incredibly interesting. Paris Eternal, GG's go next. It's not been a massively bad tournament for Paris Eternal. I'm not going to lie. They have had the tournament I expected London to have. So at the moment, the best team in Europe is Paris. And they have this knack of making some teams' life difficult, which is really, really good. And that's what you want to see from Paris. Because with a budget roster, that is incredible work. Not going to lie. They are skin and bones, Paris Eternal, and they are getting some neat map results. After that, talking of EU, London Spitfire taking on Toronto Defiant, and this planned out pretty much as I thought it would. 3-1 for the Toronto Defiant. Again, Toronto Defiant, you want to be 3-0ing these people, right? Because London are finishing second from bottom at the moment. Well, actually, they are bottom in North America, but I think they're second from bottom overall, just ahead of the Valiant. This is not great. This is not what you want to see from Toronto. You want 3-0s. You want to be sweeping these people very heavily. And that's not what's happening here. So, again, it adds to the fact that Toronto are a mid-pack team. They're not going to be up with the Mayhems and the Mayhem, or especially not like the Justice and people like that, who are going to pummel these teams like London. They really, really are. So, good map for London. I thought they'd pick up a map against Toronto, but again, not the cleanest from Toronto Defiant, and it needs to be better. So, then we got on to a massively interesting match. Just before we head into the knockouts, our final match of the regular May Melee qualifiers was San Francisco Shock taking on the Atlanta Reign. Atlanta Reign had to win. This was close. This made the Shock sweat big time. This was 3-2 to the Shock, though. So, oh boy, the Shock, there's cracks in this Shock team. For the first time in years, possibly, there are some major cracks in this Shock team. It doesn't look unbeatable anymore. It looks like a team that is going to have to work very, very hard to get where they want to be in 2021. It is not going to be easy for the Shock, and Atlanta Reign have proved this. And I tell you what, it only gets worse for Shock fans going into the knockouts. So let's move on to these knockouts then. That's the end of our quickfire, by the way. Okay, we just went through like 14 fixtures in under 10 minutes. Anyway, so the first knockout was Shanghai Dragons versus the Philadelphia Fusion. Oh my goodness me. Match of the weekend, in my opinion. Match of the weekend. If you are going to watch any match throughout this entire weekend of 20 goodness knows fixtures, Watch this one. This was 6 maps. This was incredible Overwatch. Shanghai stepped up for the first time this season, but oh, Philly, no. It was 3-2 for the Shanghai Dragons. Philly will not be going to the May Melee. Considering they topped out the East region, that must be incredibly disappointing for the Philadelphia Fusion hierarchy and the Philadelphia Fusion fans. They had looked so good. I think everyone had backed the Philly Fusion to make the May Melee tournament in Hawaii, and that is not going to be happening. Shanghai Dragons will be traveling to Hawaii, and boy oh boy, Shanghai turned it on. And that was not to put down Philadelphia Fusion, by the way. Carpe played great. Rascal, unfortunately, he got shut down a lot. Izayaki had the game of his season so far, and one of the best games I've seen Izayaki have for the Shanghai Dragons. He was incredible. And it's about time. Izayaki can be so inconsistent. If he can show this play all the time, he will be one of the best flex supports in the league. But he never shows this performance all the time, and it's so frustrating, and it must be frustrating for Shanghai fans as well. Shanghai clutched this out very well, and it is a return to the Shanghai Dragons that we knew from last season that could really just clutch and play extremely high level Overwatch. And a return to that is a welcome return, because if we get more of that Shanghai going up against Seoul, going up against the current Chengdu, going up against Philly, my goodness me, we are going to see some massive Overwatch in the East in the coming tournaments. It's been fantastic. But the other East region game was obviously Chengdu Hunters taking on Seoul Dynasty. A lot of people backed Seoul. But they come back to bite the predictors. Chengdu Hunters got a 3-1 victory over the Seoul Dynasty. Chengdu Hunters ran some spicy stuff. On the first map, which was Busan, we saw for the first time this season Faraway 1987. He grew into the map and did pretty well. We also saw a Meng for the first time as well. Some different stuff coming out from the Chengdu Hunters, but they did win Busan with that lineup. And they also played Eveltal as well instead of Nisha. So it was a different looking Chengdu Hunters, but my goodness me, it worked. And Chengdu Hunters, there's a lot of doubts around the Chengdu Hunters. Can they really sustain this level of performance? But at the moment they're doing it. They're going to Hawaii with Shanghai. It's going to be very interesting to see will Chengdu Hunters go up against the West region teams that we're going to see in Hawaii, because the West region teams, you thought it was crazy in the East. The West, oh boy. Let's start this then. So 4 teams advanced into the knockouts for qualification going to Hawaii. This was Toronto Defiant, Florida Mayhem, Dallas Fuel, San Francisco Shock, Washington Justice, and Houston Outlaws. It's 6 teams. I don't know what I'm talking about. Houston Outlaws and Washington Justice as 1 and 2 seeds got an automatic bye. So, first match was Toronto Defiant versus the Florida Mayhem. I am not surprised that Florida Mayhem sweep the Toronto Defiant here. I am really not surprised. I have a significant feeling, and I have had a significant feeling since I saw the Florida Mayhem roster, that this Florida Mayhem roster, when it matters, could turn up and surprise a lot of people. And I tell you what, they've done that. So, yeah, I'm not too surprised this is a 3-0 for the Florida Mayhem. Toronto Defiant, in my opinion, out of all of the teams that went into this knockout, were the weakest. And I think that was proved here. I don't think Toronto Defiant will make every single tournament. I'd be surprised if they do. I just don't think they've got the quality. It could be a case of time will prove fruitful for the Toronto Defiant, but I think it's going to be a long process. So, yeah, that's something to watch out for at the Toronto Defiant. It's unfortunate for them, but Toronto Defiant fans, you're not quite ready yet. You'll get there. I think you'll get there, but you're not quite ready yet. And this is good practice for them. This is good practice to get better in the long run. But again, is it the curse of Sado? Because boy oh boy, OGE this weekend? My goodness me, knockout OGE is here. Let's go. So, moving on, Dallas Fuel versus San Francisco Shock. So, it has been a very long time since I can say San Francisco Shock got swept. They lost 3-0 to the Dallas Fuel. Shock got outplayed. Fuel were insane. Can we just remind ourselves that this is Dallas Fuel without a hit scan player, a dedicated hit scan player? They do not have one, and they 3-0'd the current champions of the league. That is absolute insanity. Absolute insanity. They dump Shock out of the main melee. Shock will not be going to Hawaii. They will not be winning this main melee. They have had a rough main melee qualification, and they've had a rough knockout. That is something for the first time. That's something we're saying for the first time since the inaugural season, pretty much. Like, when's the last time we can say that Shock have massively underperformed? Because this is what this is. The Shock are on a rocky road right now, and Dallas Fuel took it into their hands to show the Shock quite what they could do, and my goodness me, they did it. Fearless has been insane. Every single member of the Dallas Fuel has been insane. And Dallas Fuel have stopped messing around with their support line. It is Fielder and Jexa, and it's Fielder and Jexa, and it's Fielder and Jexa. It's no more Repel switching in for Fielder and then playing Fielder and Repel and all this. They have settled on the support line. It is making synergy so much better for the Dallas Fuel, and it's making them pop off big time. Dallas Fuel are realizing potential that they have, and they are a team to be feared right now. Massive performance from Dallas Fuel this weekend. I cannot overstate it enough. This is the best performance in Dallas Fuel's history. Honestly, well done to the Dallas Fuel. Massive. I can tell you the last 2 times San Francisco Shock got swept. This was on the 18th of August in the 2020 season, where they got swept by Philly. They snapped back very heavily after that. And previous to that, they had not got swept since losing 4-0 to the New York Excelsior back in Stage 1 of 2019, the 9th of March 2019. So this is only approximately like the 3rd sweep San Francisco Shock have incurred as a defeat in about 3 years. That is insanity. Absolute insanity. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how San Francisco Shock snap back from this. It's been a big weekend, but I tell you what, it only gets bigger. Okay, final time for these are the matches that send you to Hawaii. It was between Florida Mayhem and the Washington Justice and Dallas Fuel and the Houston Outlaws. Yes, we got the battle for Texas in the run for Hawaii. Oh my goodness me. Florida Mayhem, Washington Justice. Who would have predicted Florida Mayhem to win this one? 3-1 for the Florida Mayhem. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Florida Mayhem turned up big time to these knockouts. Big, big, big time. OG has put in performances we have not seen him put in, possibly for his entire Overwatch League career, certainly since the Dallas Fuel homestand when he popped off big time back then. This is the realization of what OG can do, but he needs to do it consistently. If he can do this consistently, Florida Mayhem will be one of the best teams in this league. Without a doubt. This Florida Mayhem team has incredible potential, and during these knockouts they have shown exactly what they can do. They have knocked out a middle of the table team very easily, completely and utterly, just smacked them about and dumped them. Then they've gone up to the top seed and said, no. It wasn't a close match. It was 3-1. They've just said, no, get out. Incredible play. Incredible play from the Florida Mayhem this weekend, and I'll tell you what, if you're a Fuel fan, how are you feeling right now? How are you feeling right now if you're a Fuel fan? Dallas Fuel versus the Houston Outlaws. Winner goes to Hawaii, loser doesn't go. Houston Outlaws 2nd seed. Dallas Fuel 6th seed? 5th seed? Something like that. 6th seed. Dallas Fuel was 6th seed. You just 3-0'd San Francisco Shock. How are you feeling when you 3-0 the Houston Outlaws and go to Hawaii? If you'd come to me at the start of these knockouts and said Dallas Fuel are going to go 6-0 and beat the Shock and the Outlaws and go to Hawaii with the Florida Mayhem, I would have laughed. I think this is one of the most incredible tournaments / stages / knockouts we've seen in the history of the Overwatch League. It has been unpredictable. It has been insanely high skilled. It has been edge of your seat stuff. This reminds me of what we used to see in the inaugural season. It is not cut and dry. It is not, okay, stamped in, Shocker going to go there, who's going to go with them? It is massively unpredictable. Houston Outlaws must be gutted. Absolutely gutted. But I tell you what, it wasn't the Outlaws playing atrociously. It really wasn't. It was the Dallas Fuel playing on an insane level with an insanely high tempo, unpredictable plays and picks and stuff like that. Sparkle using his comfort picks but also getting value with them. Doomfist, Genji, things like that. Dallas Fuel are playing to their strengths. And I said this after the next cup in pre-season, because we saw two different sides from Dallas Fuel when they forced the bull comp with Fearless and they got absolutely pummeled. And then when they forced a double bubble comp and rolled Sol. We saw these two different sides to Dallas Fuel. And I said back then, if the Fuel play to their strengths, they could be one of the best teams in this league. What are we seeing right now? We are seeing the Fuel play to their strengths, and we are seeing them beat the best. No doubt we are seeing them beat the best. And despite what the Mayhem have done, despite the Mayhem being a higher seed than Dallas, I believe, they will go into this tournament as one of the favourites, if not the favourite, I think, Dallas. And that is a massive weight on the Dallas Fuel's shoulders, and it is massively unexpected considering their heavy roster issues coming into the season. You have to give massive props to Rush and the coaching staff at Fuel for what they've done. I cannot overstate it enough. I'm not going to lie, I'm not a Dallas Fuel fan, but it is very nice to be talking so highly of the Dallas Fuel for once. For the first time ever in the Overwatch League, really, to be speaking this highly of the Dallas Fuel is unprecedented, and it's a very nice change, I'm not going to lie. So, going to the main melee, we will see the Florida Mayhem taking on the Shanghai Dragons. That is going to be incredible. Gangnam Jin versus Lee Jae-gon. It's going to be insane. Fate versus his old team. That's going to be a crazy match, dude. And then Dallas Fuel taking on the Chengdu Hunters. The battle of the unpredictables. Dallas can run funny stuff. Chengdu can run funny stuff. Hawaii next week is going to be an absolute... it's going to be a barnstormer. It's going to be insane. Unfortunately for us EUers, I've seen the times and it's not great. That's putting it lightly. However, we will look ahead to that. This week of fixtures especially has thrown everyone's power rankings into shambles. Dallas Fuel have proved a lot of doubters wrong. Shock have got a lot of work to do. Mayhem have proved a lot of doubters wrong. And now we're starting to have doubts in our mind about the Justice, the Outlaws. How can you power rank this league right now and predict anything? It is incredibly unstable, incredibly unpredictable, but my goodness me, does it make for exciting matches. And I tell you what, if it's going to be like this all season, I'm on the ride every step of the way. But yeah, I'm going to leave it here for this one. I'm not going to go through the standings in this one. I will probably go through the standings and lead up to the June Joust. We will probably do some more power rankings prior to the June Joust as well. Next week, obviously, is Hawaii. Massive cut down in the amount of fixtures we're going to see. It is a double bracket elimination, losers bracket, winners bracket. So we will see a fair amount of fixtures, but nowhere near what we've been seeing in the past 3 weeks. I can't wait. And I'm sure you guys can't either. But there's plenty more coming up on the channel very, very soon. Make sure you look at take a look or follow or join the Discords and give the Twitters a follow. Everything that's in the video description, link to Illusion Gaming and myself. I will be very, very grateful for any support you can show. And yeah, exciting Overwatch on the way, and exciting Overwatch happening as well. Contenders is also here if you're missing out on some Overwatch as well for EU and NA, along with Korea and everywhere else. It's super interesting, and I'll tell you what, support tier 2, as always. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.